Guru Vishnum Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Om Keshvaya Namaha, Om Narayana Namaha, Om Madhvaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha, Om Vishnuvaya Namaha, Matsodharaya Namaha, Trivikramaya Namaha, Vamanaya Namaha, Sridharaya Namaha, Hrishikeshaya Namaha, Padmanabhaya Namaha, Damodaraya Namaha, Sankarshnaya Namaha, Vasudevaya Namaha, Pradyumnaya Namaha, Niruddhaya Namaha, Purushottamaya Namaha, Dokshaya Namaha, Narasimhaya Namaha, Achyutaya Namaha, Janardhanaya Namaha, Upendraya Namaha, Hare Namaha, Sri Krishnaya Namaha, Hare Om. Lord Narayana, who is the soul of the universe, who is the refuge of everyone, entered the mind of Vasudeva. People were amazed to see glow that emanated from Vasudeva. He shone like the nobody noonday sun, since the Lord had found an abode in him. Devaki received in her the embodiment. Devaki received in her the embodiment of auspiciousness, the essence of all the wealth and the glory of the universe, the soul of the universe, the indestructible Atman, which resides in every living and non-living things. Devaki had the great good fortune of becoming the mother of the Lord of Lords, Lord Krishna. Like the east glows with the newly risen moon, she looked beautiful. Her form was radiant, but the world could not see it, since she was captive in the prison of Kamsa's prison. Her glory was hidden like a lamp placed inside a pot. Like Saraswati, the goddess of learning, is hidden in the mind of a pandit who is greatly about his learning and refuses to impart it to others. Kamsa, however, knew that she was glowing with an unearthly light. Devaki Kamsa, however, knew that she was glowing with an unearthly light. Devaki was holding the Lord in her womb, and the entire house was bathed in a strange light since she was there. Her lips bore a beautiful smile, and Kamsa, looking at her, spoke to himself and said, Devaki has never looked like this before. It seems to me this strange glow in her is there because of the child that is to be born. I think it is Narayana who is to be born, and that's why she looks so very beautiful and radiant. I must take proper precautions lest he should do what he was promised to do. I do not want to die. I could kill her now, but she is a woman. She is my sister, and she is with the child. Each killing in itself is an unforgivable crime, and the world will condemn me. If I kill her now, all my fame and all my wealth and even my lifespan will suffer because of this sin. Is it not a fact that a man who lives in constant association with the terrible deeds is but a walking corpse? When he is alive, people will curse him, and when he dies, he will go to the hell which goes by the name Andatmas. Kamsa desisted from killing his sister and awaited the birth of the child with impatience. The thoughts of the coming child had become with him an obsession. While sitting down on a seat, he would suddenly stop and look at the seat since he thought he saw a child in the seat. He would tell himself, this was a child on the seat and I was about to sit on it. Terrible. He would then go to bed and try to lie down, and there too he would see the child. He would move away from there and stand far away. Looking down, he would see a child at his feet. He would go and sit down to eat something. Instead of food, he would see a child on the plate. So Krishna is in his mind and Krishna is visible for him. He would get up in disgust and walk from there. At every step, the child would persist in lying on his way. To Kamsa, the entire world seemed to be pervaded by the Lord Krishna of Lords in the form of a mere child. The time was drawing near. Brahma, Mahadeva, and all the Devas went to the presence of Devaki in the prison and stood in front of her with folded palms and praised the Lord. They said, Salutation to thee, O Lord Krishna. Salutation to thee, O Narayana. You are gracious enough to take different forms at different times to save us from despair. You are Matsya, you are Hayagriva, and you are a Kurma. You become a Narsimha and Navaraha, Hamsa and Parashurama, Rama, Yajna and Kapila. Many other forms were assumed by you so far. Now, when the earth needs you, please save the world from the great suffering she is undergoing. We bow down to you. They then spoke to Devaki and said, "You are a fortunate princess, since you will be the mother of Lord Narayana himself. Adishesha has already been born to you, and now this child which is to be born will be the savior of the world. You need you need have no more fear of Kamsa. His days are numbered. Having pacified her and encouraged her, Brahma and the rest of the celestial god Ishvara and the host vanished from their presence. The time was auspicious. It had the charm of all the six seasons. The planets and the stars were on the positions from where they showered peace and joy for the world. The four quarters were clear and placid, and the star Rohini was in the ascent, the star which is governed by Prajapati. The sky was clear and studded with stars which were shining brightly. The waters in the rivers were clear and sweet. The lakes were filled with flowers, lotuses, utpalas. The trees were covered with the flowers, and gentle breeze was flowing, and it brought soft and intense scene of the flowers with it. The fires which are kindled by the Brahmins for yajna were burning without smoke, and an air of peace and tranquility pervaded the earth. The minds of all men were happy for no reason. Only Kamsa was unhappy. The divine Dunduvi was being played in the heavens. Kinnaras were singing, and so were the Gandharvas, Siddhas, and Charanas were chanting words of praise. The Apsaras and Vidyadharas, women, were dancing with abandon, with happiness. The Devas and the Rishis showered flowers on earth. There was heard a great rumbling from the clouds, which was like the roar of the ocean. It was midnight. The Muhurta was about Abhijit, and Narayana, who is in the hearts of everyone, was born to Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. Devaki gave birth to Narayana, like the east brings with the forth with the glorious moon. Krishna is taken to Gokula. Vasudeva looked at the newborn child and he was amazed. It was not an ordinary child. Narayana appeared in his real form. Vasudeva saw that it was not a child but Narayana himself, who was lying there on his arms. He looked at the lotus eyes, at his forearms, at the Shankha, Chakra, Gada, and Padma in his four hands. Vasudeva, very lucky person to see the Krishna Narayana Darshana. See, Vasudeva saw the famed mark on the chest of the child, the mark known as Srivatsa. The jewel Kaustuba was gleaming on his neck, and he was wearing yellow silk, dark as rain, cloud, and he made the entire place shine with the splendor of his crown. His earrings, which were shaped like a fish, the earrings were shaped like a fish with the glory of his glory. That was himself. Vasudeva looked at the glorious form and kept on looking without moving his eyes. It looked as if he was drinking the beauty of the child with his eyes. He came to his senses, realizing that he had just become the father of a child, and being a Kshatriya, he had to perform the usual rites for the child. He worshipped 1,000 Brahmins, and with his clothes dripping with holy waters of the river, he gave away 1,000 cows as gift. All this he did in his mind only. He did all these promises and given the cows in his own mind, promising to himself that he would do it all the moment when he can do it. Vasudeva then placed the child on the ground with folded palms, and with his head bowed in humble worship, he spoke words of prayer to the Paramapurusha. He then said, "In your infinite kindness to the earth and to the poor, Vasudeva and Devaki, you assumed the form of a human being. How can I speak the words of thrill that are rushing to my lips? I am no longer unfortunate. I am the most fortunate among men, and my wife has the honor of being the mother of Lord himself. Great is your mercy towards us." Devaki then said, "You are the sole destroyer of everything, please. You are the sole destroyer of everything unpleasant. Please have pity on Mother Earth and on us, and put an end to the tyranny of Kamsa. And please let not Kamsa see you in this form, the form to see which yogis spent endless years in penance. The forum which is granted to the sight of the every few men, sight of very few men. It is not meant for ordinary eyes like mine to dwell on your divine form. Please hide this glorious vision. Your birth has made me sad. Unlike the other mothers, I cannot keep you for myself. You know, my lord, how Kamsa has killed all the children I have borne all these years. Even now, word would have reached him that you have been born. He must now be rushing towards you with his swords held aloft on his right hand. Let him not see you in this form. He does not deserve it. The Lord said, Devaki, you are the purest of women. In your previous Janma, you were born in the line of Swayambhu Manu, and your name was Prashni. This Vasudeva went by the name of Sutapas. You both were commended by Prajapati to create, and both of you performed strenuous tapas. Your mind was set on me and only me. The penance went on for 12,000 years. I was pleased with your devotion and appeared before you in this very forum which you see now. I asked that boon. I asked what boon you wanted. You were both deluded by Maya at the moment. After all the severity of the penance you had performed, you would have had to ask moksha, release from human bondage, but you wanted me as your son. You then became involved in the pleasures of the world, and in course of time, I was born to you. I was called Rishingarba and became famed for my good qualities. Later, you both were famed by the names of Kashyapa and Aditi. I was then born as your son, as Upendra or Vamana was my name at that time. I am better known as Vamana, who stopped Bali's yajna. This is the third time I am born as your son. It is to prove to you that Narayana has kept his word, that he would be born as your son, and again, that this form has assumed by me. If you do not see me in my real form, you will again get involved in the Maya of the world and will be unable to attain moksha. But now you will think of me as your son and also realize that I am the Brahman. After this birth, you will attain moksha. You can be sure of that. The Lord was silent, and even as they were looking on, his divine form was lost, and he became an ordinary child in their eyes. Vasudeva had been commanded to take the newborn child to leave it in Gokula in the house of Nanda. Vasudeva had been commanded to take the newborn child and leave it in the Gokula in the house of Nanda, the chief of the cowherds in Gokula. He was to bring back with him the child which had been born to Yashoda, the wife of Nanda. Vasudeva and Devaki were wondering how this could be achieved because he's been prisoned and he's in the prison with a chain tying up his hands and body, shoulder. Kamsa had doubled the guards ever since he knew about child to be born to Devaki. Vasudeva placed the child in a small wicker basket and covered him with his upper cloth. He held the basket on his hands and looked in despair at the locked doorways. A miracle was seen. The locks snapped open on their own accord. And with amazement, their faces, they watched the doors swing open. Vasudeva walked towards the door and found that watchmen were all sunk in the deep sleep. He walked out without any trouble and reached the banks of the river Yamuna. The sky was suddenly overcast and dense black clouds gathered in the heavens. Rain began to fall in torrents, and Vasudeva did not know how he was going to cross the river, which threatened to bring him up banks. Placing his faith in the Lord, Vasudeva stepped into the waters without his knowing. Adishesha followed him, and with his 1,000 herds, he protected the child from the rain. The river Yamuna, whose waters had swollen so much because of the downpour caused by Indra himself, suddenly gave way to Vasudeva even as the ocean gave way to Sri Ramachandra when he wanted to cross the ocean in Lanka. Vasudeva reached Nanda Gokula. Following the commands of the Lord, he went straight to the home of Nanda. Vasudeva reached Nanda Gokula. He reached the apartments of Yashoda, Nanda's queen. Saw a child. Vasudeva saw a child lying by her side. Gently he lifted the child after placing his own son by the side of Yashoda. He placed the other child in his basket. It was a girl. The entire Gokula was asleep in a trance. Vasudeva traced his steps back to Mathura and Mathura and came back to his prison. He placed the child by the side of Devaki and he found that the doors had locked themselves. He placed the irons on his ankle and hands, and they waited for the coming of Kamsa. Vishnumaya. The place was roused by the lusty cries of a newborn child. The guards who were at the doorways rushed to the presence of Kamsa and said, "My lord, Devaki's child has born. We hurried here at once to inform you about it." Kamsa was lying on his bed, trying to sleep. Sleep had forsaken him long ago. Ever since he knew that Devaki was with the child, that it was her eighth child, he knew no peace. He knew no peace. Seeing the unearthly halo which had surrounded her, he knew that the child to be born would be the death of him, and he could not sleep because of threatening by the new child. When he heard that the child had been born, he snatched his sword and his hair lying in the breeze of the. He rushed to the prison which held Devaki and Vasudeva. Devaki saw him and Devaki saw him and thought it was the god of death who was coming towards her. So terrible was the look on his face. She fell at his feet. She fell at his feet and said, "My dear beloved brother, please do not kill this child. Spare her to me, because it is a girl which was being born to me. Every one of my sons I gave you, and you killed them all. But this is a girl. What can poor girl can do? I am sure she is incapable of fulfilling the prophecy which was frightened you. Spare her. Killing a woman is a terrible sin. Do not commit that folly. I was once dear to you. In the name of that love, I ask you, please give me this child." She held the child to her bosom and held it tight. Tears were bathing the form of the newborn child. Devaki's prayers fell on deaf ears of Kamsa, was like an one possessed, and the fear of death had made a beast of him. He snatched the child roughly from the weak hands of his mother, of his sister, and holding the child with his tender legs, he tried to dash it against a piece of a stone. The child, which was Vishnumaya, slipped from his grip and flew into the sky. Amazed at what had happened, everyone looked up. There at high up in the sky, they saw the form of Devi. She held several weapons of destruction in her 8 hands. The child, which was Vishnumaya, slipped away from the Kamsa's hand and flew into the sky. Amazed at what happened, everyone looked up. There, high up in the sky, they saw a form of Devi. She held several weapons and destructions in her 8 hands. Her neck was adorned with a garland of sweet flowers. Jewels gleamed from her neck, arms, and feet. She was holding a bow, a trident, arrows, sword, conch, discus, and a mace. Siddhas, Charanas, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Kinnaras, and other celestial beings were around her, and they worshipped her. From above the world, from the sky where she was poised, she spoke to Kamsa and said, "Stupid fool, how foolish of you! Try and killing me. What can you achieve by killing me? Your enemy, the Lord, the child which is destined to kill you, has already been born. Do not kill innocent people without cause, for no reason." She vanished from the sky, and earth was. The miracle which happened and the words of Vishnu Maya had a strange effect on Kamsa. He was suddenly ashamed of himself for his spite against Vasudeva and Devaki. Full of remorse, Kamsa with his own hands removed the handcuffs and chains which had bound their hands and feet and said, "Oh my dear sister, oh my dear Vasudeva, I feel extremely sorry for all that has happened to both of you because of me and my cruel nature. In my love for myself, if I became a demon and killed all our children, my heart had become empty of all compassion and love for others. I dread of think of the future, about the special hell which will be waiting for me when I die. I have been guilty of child murder. For a while he was silent and then spoke again. I have known that human beings speak lies to serve their purpose, but till now I did not realize that even the gods speak lies. Believing the words of an unknown voice from the sky, I killed my sister's children. Devaki, Devaki, please forgive me, and please do not grieve for your dead children. This earthly body of ours is transient. It is like a vessel made out of a mud, like a pot when broken loses its form. Even so, the human body loses its form when death comes, but the Atman inside it is like in the air in the pot and is never destroyed. Here there is no cause to grieve. The one who knows does not feel sad at the recurrence of death and birth, but the ignorant person who does not know the truth about Brahman gets deluded by the ego. He feels that Atman and the body are inseparable. Life on this earth with the samsara, where man marries woman and gets children, is the life led by an ignorant man, and to him the earth is the full of pain and pleasure, alternately depending on whether he is with his children and those dear to him are parted from them by death and such like. As long as is caught in the web of Maya, he will not learn the truth, and so he keeps on grieving. But you are both different. You know that every being born on this earth has been born to, so that because of the karma it has performed in its previous birth. Ignorant people think ignorantly and consider that someone has killed and someone has been killed, but you know that it is not so. And so, armed as you are with a real wisdom, please be gracious enough to forgive the sinner of Kamsa. With tears flowing from his eyes, he fell at the feet of the two erstwhile captives and elapsed and clasped them in his hands. Devaki and Vasudeva, being very noble and good, realized that he was genuinely repentant and unhappy. They raised him up and told him that they had quite forgotten his misdemeanor. Devaki smiled at him and said, "My dear brother, what you say is quite right. It's only the unwise, those uninitiated in the truth about the Atman. It is they who suffer from the pain of separation and pleasure due to the passing things. So long as the difference between the illusion and reality is not realized, feelings of sadness, happiness, sorrow, fear, hatred, avarice, obsession, arrogance, and such like develop in the heart of man. They envelop, they envelop his thinking powers and blind him. When a man hates another, he hates himself, since the same Atman is residing in the bodies of the hater and the hated. If this truth is realized, men will never, if the truth is realized, man will never more be involved in the world of man. When he found out how noble and forgiving they were, Kamsa felt even more humble and taking leave of them, went back to his palace with a light heart. Kamsa's campaigns. When the sky is overcast with dense clouds, it is not possible for the sun to be seen. At times, the clouds do part for a moment and there is a gleam of sunlight caught by the eye, but the clouds over it again. His ministers, who were all haters of the Devas and who were all embodiment of ignorance and foolishness and pride, spoke with a great passion and vehemence. The suggestions offered by them were profuse. They said it is obvious that the child is kept somewhere secretly, most probably away from the city of Mathura, maybe another city, a village in the suburb, perhaps where the clouds live. sensible way to tackle the problem is to destroy all the children around us who are less than a year old. They have all been defeated by you. The Devas can do nothing to harm you. They have all been defeated by you so often in the wars that they are scared of you. Why even the mention of your name is enough to drive them away from any place. As for Narayana, your arch enemy, what can he do? He is always hiding somewhere, afraid to come out and face you in the real fight. Narayana is the refuge of the Devas. He is the very root of the tree called Swarga. It has been said that he is found wherever Sanatana Dharma is practiced. And the very foundation, the keystone of this Dharma is chanting the Vedas, cows, Brahmanas, who are forever performing yagas and yajnas and tapas. The best way, my Lord, to destroy this Narayana is to kill all those Brahmins who study and propagate the Vedas. Kill the rishis who perform tapas. Kill the cows in the ashramas. Kill the cows in the ashramas since they give butter and ghee to feed the fires in the ashramas, the sacrificial fires, yajna. The several forms of Narayana are reputed to be the Brahmins, cows, and Vedas, and abstract qualities like tapas. Truth speaking, self-control, subduing the indriyas, concentration in one's meditation, compassion, patience, and yagas. Narayana loves the devas and the entire celestial host led by Mahadeva and Indra. He is a well-known hater of the asuras, as we told you before the devas and others can do no harm. It's only Narayana who is wearing the noose of the death round his neck, thinking that it was a garland of flowers. Kamsa forgot all the many good qualities he has borne with. He was pleased with his ministers, who to him were his well-wishers, friends. At once he made arrangement for asuras to go in all the four quarters and harass the many Brahmins and the Yajnishalas. The asuras went about their task happily, not knowing that death was fast approaching every one of them. Is there anything more powerful than hurting of good men to shorten one's life, to take away his wealth and his fame and lighthouse? When Vishnumaya was born to Yashoda, everyone in Gokula went into a trance and only knew the child had been born to Yashoda. They did not even know whether it was a boy or a girl. After Vasudeva came and the exchange the children had taken place, they all woke up from the deep sleep and news spread like the fire. A son had been born to Nanda. The entire Gokula rushed to the house of their chief of Nanda Maharaj to see the child. There he lay, the Lord of the universe, by the side of his mother. Small and frail, held in her arms, they said he looked like a blue lotus. Nanda was in the seventh heaven. He had a son who was beautiful as the moon. He made the Brahmins recite the holy mantras to avert all evil, and he gave away gifts to many people. The purification ceremony by name Jatakarma was performed for the newborn child in Nanda Maharaja's palace. The earth is purified by Kala. The earth is purified by Kala. The time the human body is purified by bathing. The human body is purified by bathing in clean water. Dirty vessels such as lake by cleaning with cleansing agents. The child was being born of the womb of a woman is cleansed by Jatakarma. Brahmins are cleansed by yagas. Wealth is purified by giving the senses, the indriyas, by tapas, the mind when it is made to realize contentment, and the Atman when it was learned Atma Vidya, the truth about self. The entire Gokula had a festive season look since the prince had been born there. Every house was decorated and the streets were all sprinkled with perfumed water. The woman wore gay colored clothes. The woman wore grey colored clothes, and the gopis were dancing in the streets. The woman waved silver plates filled with saffron. The woman waved silver plates filled with the saffron water in the front of the child and said, "May you live long, let no evil befall you." Rohini had given birth to a son too, and she was the sister of Yashoda. She was hiding in Gokula to escape the tyranny of the Kamsa, who had been harassing all the Yadavas and their women. So the two sisters with their sons were glowing like queens of the gods of the gopis. Rohini's son. Two sisters with their sons were glowing like queens in the midst of the gopis. Rohini's son was fair and Yashoda's son was dark. Putana, Nandagopa was one of the vassals of Kamas, and the time had come when he had to make his annual visit to Mathura to pay his tribute to the treasury and to pay tax to the Kamsa's government. He went to Mathura, hearing that Nanda had come to Mathura. Vasudeva went to see him. They had been very close friends and they embraced each other with affection, like the father of a son. I am indeed fortunate that I am able to see you and tell you about my happiness and the good fortune that has befallen. You are very dear to my you are very dear to me, and yet it is very rarely that we meet. In this world, those who those who Nanda spoke with his tears in his eyes and said, "You have been very unfortunate. Your sons have been killed by Kamsa, and the last one was a girl child, and she too escaped. I am told left you and flew into the sky. Fortune, good or bad, rules of this life of man, and we were powerless in this presence. Misfortune has been your constant companion so far. Who knows, times may change. However, man who does not set any great store by the ways of fortune is one who has understood the truth about the Atman, and such a man is unmoved by the vagaries of fate." Vasudeva replied suitably and said, "My friend, do not tarry in Mathura too long. You may pay your dues to the king. I felt that there are evil omens to be seen in Gokula. It is better that you hurry up back to your wife and child." They took tender, they took tender leave of each and the other. They took tender leave for each other, and Nanda proceeded towards the Gokula in a cart drawn by a high-born bullocks. His mind was uneasy since Vasudeva had spoken evil omens. He knew that Vasudeva would not have spoken thus unless something is threatening him. Praying to Narayana, Nanda hurried his dear bullocks and traveled towards Gokula. Kamsa thought the time had come when he should act according to the advice of his evil ministers. He decided to begin the killing of all the newborn children in the country. He thought up methods of doing it and finally decided on the right person to execute his orders. The wife of one of his mentors went by the name Putana, and she was dreadful Asura woman. Kamsa summoned her to his presence and told her that he wanted to do without qualm. She agreed to do as she was bid. From that moment, she began wandering at will in the nearby cities and villages, places where people had their homes. Is it not a fact that the Asuras can show their power only in places where the praises of the Lord are not heard? In such is the case, how could Putana ever hope to do the harm to the Lord himself, who was living in Gokula in the human form? Wandering as she was at will, one day Putana, who was flying in the air, saw Gokula, and since she had not gone there yet, decided that she would go there. With her powers of Maya, she changed herself to a beautiful woman, and she went to the sacred spot of the name thought by name Gokula. She looked around and seeing the large house where a number of women were coming and going, and she entered the house. It happened to be the palace of Nanda. Putana had tied up her hair in a loose knot and had placed a wreath of jasmine on it. With her wide hips, lovely breast, she caught the eyes of everyone there. She was indeed charming. Her hair was curly and fell in tight little curls around her face. She entered the house of Nanda, reached the courtyard where the Lord was. He had concealed all his glory in the form of a small child, but it was a chance that Putana saw this beautiful child in the cradle. As soon as she set foot in the courtyard, the child closed his eyes. Perhaps the Lord knew that she would be blessed with his grace if his eyes fell on her, and that would indeed be a hindrance to his self-pointing task, destroying the tower. Putana looked all around her. It is how happened that no one was about. She lifted the child and the cradle. Taking him with her arms, she sat down and placed him on her lap. It was as foolish as taking a live cobra which is sleeping and placing on her neck, thinking that it is cobra. The Lord held her breast firmly in his two little hands and began to suck lustily. After a few seconds, she realized that he was sucking her very life. She was in great pain, and all her vitals were for torture. When he sucked at her breast, she began to scream. Her purpose was all forgotten. Leave me, she kept on saying, and she tried to pluck her breast away from him, the mouth of the child. But it was so no avail. She shrieked in agony, and the earth, the sky, even the planets shook in response. So loud was her pain filled voice, people thought that there was a her beautiful form was all gone. She fell down and dead, and since she looked like a great Vritra after he had fallen a victim to Indra's Vajra. When she fell, trees around her to the she extent of 6 crores felt like piece of twigs. People rushed to the spot where the noise came from, and around this mountain of a woman fallen on the ground. They stood amazed, and suddenly they saw Nanda's wife. They stood amazed, and suddenly they saw Nanda's little son playing on her immense breast. They rushed towards him and carried him away from there. Yashoda and Rohini then performed so many of the rites which are meant to protect the child from evil, and form of around they all stood around the form of the dead Putana. Yashoda hurried inside. The child, having fed him at her breast, she put him to sleep and covered him with a piece of silk. Nanda arrived just then from Mathura, and he was taken aback at the scene of which met his eyes. He told everyone, indeed, my friend Vasudeva has divine gifts, or else how could he know that there could be danger here? He told that evil omens would seen in Gokula and asked me to hurry up, come back. It took all the Gopas a very long time to move body of Putana. They had to cut her up. There was a great conflagration, and the sky was lit up by the glow from the fire. When the body was burning, people around were amazed at something unusual. There arose from her burning body of perfume, the sandalwood and divine scents. No one could explain it. Putana, who was Asuri, was killed by the Lord. He had drunk of her breast. and all her sins had been sucked out of her. She had become purified since she had touched the Lord, and she had touched her with his lips. Fortunate Putana, when the grace of the Lord is given to her, to a woman who wanted to feed him the poison. Fortunate indeed was Yashoda and the gopis and the cows in Gokula who fed him with milk. They reached moksha from which no one comes back to the earth. The cowards could not connect the divine scent which pervaded the place and the burning of the body of Putana, who had now become Punita. They just wondered as to where the perfume came from and went to their homes. Nanda was then told about how a beautiful woman came into the Gokula and had deceived everyone there. No one had guessed that she was an Asuri, and it was that good fortune of all of them and the grace of Narayana that protected the child from the dread calamity which might have overtaken him. They talked about it far into the night and went to sleep, still unable to explain how the child had managed to escape from the dreadful woman. And once again, they offered prayers to Narayana for protecting the child Krishna. Palashruti. Anyone who listens to the story by name Putana Moksham with attention and reverence will be blessed by the good fortune of having his mind eternally set on Krishna. He will have unswerving devotion to Krishna. King Parikshit said, "My lord, you have told me the stories of the many avatars of Narayana. Matsya Avatara was wonderful, and so were the others." King Parikshit said, "My lord, you have told me the stories of many avatars of Narayana. Matsya Avatara was wonderful, and so were the others. And the purpose for which the Lord assumed these avatars have amazed me and filled my ears and my mind with undiluted pleasure. But this avatar of the Lord, Krishna, I feel is the most beautiful of them all. I have been told that listening to the stories of Krishna Avatara makes the despondency in the mind vanish, and many desires which make a man unhappy also vanish. The mind becomes cleansed of all the impure thoughts. The mind that thinks only of the Lord Krishna and it wants only the company of the devotees of Narayana. Please have the goodness to fill the last few days of my life with infinite pleasure of listening to the praises of Krishna and about the incidents in Gokula which thrilled all the men who were fortunate to have been with him. Shukla Shuka Maharshi continued the narration to the Krishna's Leelas. Shatakasura and Trinavarta came, and Yashoda was sitting with all her friends, and did not notice that the child had gone up after a while. He cried, and no one paid attention to him. He became very angry, and with his little legs were tender than the creeper clinging to a tree, he kicked the cart whereunder he was placed. There was a great noise, and the people saw that the cart had fallen far away, as though it had been flung away. All the vessels and pots which had been placed in it had been either broken or crushed, and the wheel had come off the cart. The cart had fallen in its side. No one knew what had happened. Some of the little boys who had been there said that his child had kicked the cart, and this was the result. The people did not know how it could be possible for such a young child to perform such a feat. They thought for a while, and the mother gathered the child in her arms, thinking God that nothing would happen to her darling. No one knew the Kamsa's henchman was an Asura by name Shakatasura. He had come to Gokula, and he had entered the wheel of the cart, and with the intention of running away with the child and later killing it. The Lord knew what he was up to, and with the kick of his sacred foot, he killed the Asura, and no one knew what had happened. Once Yashoda, after bathing her son, sat in the courtyard with the child on her lap. All of a sudden, she found that the child was very heavy. She did not know why, and thinking that it was just her imagination, she tried to forget it. But the weight became more and more, and finally, finding unbearable, she placed the child on the ground. Seeing that he was sleeping, she went inside the house to mind several duties in the household. Another of Kamsa's Myrmidons, the Trinavarta by name, had come to Gokula, killed a newborn child. Ever since Putana died, they must all have some idea and come to the conclusion that the danger to their king lay on the Gokula in the form of the dark skinned child, which was the darling of everybody. Trinavarta took the form of a whirlwind. Everyone in Gokula was suddenly overpowered by the fury of the sudden blast. There was so much power in the current and so much dust that no one was able to see anything. The eight quarters were resounding with the noise of the whirlwind when, and there was a darkness everywhere. People were rushing here and there in the panic. Suddenly, the fury of the wind abated. They could now open their eyes. Yashoda, who rushed to the courtyard to take her child, could not find it. She called out to others, and they all looked everywhere for the child and could not find it. They could not find Lord Krishna. Baby, stones and dust were falling from the sky incessantly, blinding them off and on, and for still the search went on for the child and which could not be found. The entire Gokula was plunged in a hole. Since Dhanavarta, in the meantime, had carried the child far away, high in the sky, up in the sky. His aim was to rise as high as he could and then dash the child to the child caught his neck between his two little hands, and Trinavarta found himself choking. It seemed to him as though a huge rock had been tied to his neck and that it was throttling him. He could let his breath come only in great gasps, and even that stopped after a while. Trinavarta was dead. When this fury of a whirlwind adopted had abated, the people of Gokula saw the huge form of Asura fell down. In his arms, they found the child Krishna. They took the child, which was clinging to the immense chest of the dead Asuras. In his arms, they found the child. They took the child, which was clinging to the immense chest of the dead Asura, and gave it to Ashuda. No one could understand how it happened, how the child escaped the death of the hands of one who evidently was an Asura. In their joy at getting him back, no one paid much attention to the fact that was going. This young child had killed the Asura. They spoke themselves and said, those who wish evil to others else said, it is fortunate that Narayana kindly, looks kindly on us and ours, or else he could the child really have lived. A third man said, Nanda has performed so many good actions. He was he was spent so much wealth on charity, and he was seen by and he is such a good man that God is good to him. One day Yashoda was feeding her son. He drank his full and he was playing with her for a while. Suddenly he felt sleepy and Yashoda was looking at him with a tender smile. He was yawning and his little mouth was small and round like a flower. When she was thus looking at his mouth, which was open, Yashoda was taken aback, and what she saw inside the little mouth, she saw the universe. She saw the sky, the three worlds, the clusters of stars, the sun and the moon, Agni, Vayu, and the lords of all the quarters. She saw the oceans and all the islands. She saw mountains, forests, animals, and everything. A trembling seized her, and she wondered what it was all about. Before she could even think on it, the Lord covered with his Maya, and she forgot the entire incident. The naming ceremony of the children Balarama and Krishna. Gargama Rishi was a famous priest of the Yaduvamsha, Kshatriya dynasty at that time. Garga arrived in Gokula. Nanda received him with a great joy and excitement and reverence. He prostrated before him, he honored him duly, and after offering him Argya and Padya, he placed him on an honored seat and said, Brahman, how can I express my happiness at your coming? When great men like you leave your ashrama and comes to the houses of ordinary men like me, it is clear that your desire is to do good to us. How can I say I've been blessed with the sight of a great personage like your gracious self? You are proficient in the study of Jyotishya, Jyotishya which is supposed to teach men knowledge which is beyond the comprehension of the senses. Please let me take advantage of the good fortune that has befallen me. I have two sons, and if you will grace me with your blessings, please perform the naming ceremony and the accompanying rites. Garga said, Nanda, I am the family priest of Yadavas, and I have earned some reputation in the world, and people follow my action intently. If I perform the rites you speak of, you speak of Kamsa, Kamsa will hear about it and try to guess to why priest of the Yadavas has would have performed them, and he may rashly arrive at the conclusion that your son is the son of Devaki. When her eighth child was born, it is well known that Kamsa found it to be a girl. This child flew into the skies of his hands as you. And again, Kamsa will think about the great friendship which exists between you and Vasudeva. On the top of all this, Kamsa hears that it was I performed the rites for the child. He is sure to cause a lot of trouble to you and your child. Nanda said, we can avert all that you are afraid of in this Gokula, in my house, without a knowledge of even my nearest kinsman. Please perform the rites secretly in the Goshala. I will not have any open celebrations and announcement. I am very keen that you should be the one to name the children. Garga agreed to do what he had actually come here to do, the mission for which he had traveled all the way to Gokula. He said, the young child, the son of Rohini, charms everyone with his beauty and will. In later life, charm everyone with his excellent qualities. I will name him as Rama. Since he will also be very powerful, he will be known as Bala. He is also to be named as Sankarshana. This other son of yours is dark in complexion. I will call him as Krishna. Once his previous birth, once in his previous birth, this other son of yours is dark complexion, and I will call him as Krishna. Once in the previous birth, he was the son of Vasudeva, so we call him name as Vasudeva. But do not let that name be used. Let it be secret. The wise say that your son has many names according to his many qualities. I know them, but the men of the world do not know them. This child, which is a source of joy to you and all to the Gokula, will bring you great good fortune. Because of him, all your troubles will disappear. In one of his previous births, the kingdom was without a king, and as a result of this, country became harassed by thieves and atheists. This son of yours was born as the king of the country and delivered it of its trouble. This refers to Avatara Prithu. Vena was a king who was bent on harassing the subjects. He would punish all those who protected the Vedas and the Vedangas, and atheism was gaining the upper hand with this Vena kingdom. It followed that thieving and other similar adharmas became rampant in the country. After the death of Vena, the Lord Narayana was born as a king Prithu and delivered the earth of her pain. Those who love this son of yours, this Krishna, will not be troubled by enemies, just as Asuras who are devoted to Narayana are not troubled because of their Asuric birth. Please take very good care of Krishna, your son, who will be performing great things for the good of all of you. After blessing all of them, Garga left them and went to his way to tell Vasudeva and Devaki all about the happenings in Gokula and about the welfare of the children. Rama and Krishna were governed. They grew up enough to run around all over the place. They began to play in the Gokula with the children in other houses for hours on end. They would be missing the Yashoda, and Rohini would begin to worry. So passed the days of their early childhood. This is how Krishna's birth has Krishna appeared in prison as a son of Devaki and Vasudeva. That's the story of Krishna. Krishna Leelas are many. I am reading the Krishna Leela, chapter 52 tomorrow. Yashoda ties up Krishna sometimes, and then Krishna, the life and soul of Gokula, a handful of Aranyaka fruits. From Gokula to Vrindavana, he goes to Vrindavana. Then he killed Agasura in Vrindavana. Brahma got a doubt about this coward's boys, and Brahma hides them. Brahma's confusion. Balarama kills Dhenukasura later, and the poisoned lake near Yamuna river, he cleaned the river poison, and he asked the Kaliya to move out of the lake. Lord Krishna danced on the top of the head of the Kaliya. So Kaliya left the lake and subdued there are so many small leelas of Krishna in Gokula and Vrindavana, and Pralambasura is also will be killed. And also another incident, a fire taken place in the forest, and Lord Krishna saved all the coward's boys. He told the boys to close their eyes, and he swallowed the fire, and the boys are all protected. That is the story of appearance of Krishna. I narrated in a brief manner. Thank you very much for listening to the story of Krishna.